job is to sit down. What is at issue here, Stephen? What's at issue is not whether I should be negotiating the contract. Mm-hmm. The issue is who I negotiated with. We negotiate, we go back and forth, we come through, we go the next day, we negotiate, get it all done. I get a call, I don't want you to call me anymore. Micah, don't call me anymore.
He said
so
that
we
to
haven't
you?
Called.
Micah Parsons said to you, I don't want you to call me anymore.
Don't call me anymore. Don't call me anymore.
After calling you,
that's correct.
And
well,
igniting a negotiation, he turns around and exchanging numbers
and
negotiating.
Don't call me anymore.
And then he calls you back and said, "Don't call. I don't want you to call me anymore."
The agent calls. He says, "We need to start a negotiation with Micah." Guy says, "Well, we have negotiated. We'll send you over the deal. Proverbially, just keep it. I won't tell you where to put it, but just keep it. We're going to start a negotiation." Okay, we've had the negotiation, period.
A lot there. All right, Stephen A., what was your biggest takeaway from your conversation with the general manager of the Cowboys?
Jerry hasn't changed. Jerry is as resolute as ever. And his mentality is that I got you under contract for the next 3 years. This is last year your deal under the rookie scale, and then I can franchise tag you next year, and I can franchise tag you the year after. You ain't gonna walk around here acting like you got leverage that you don't have. I'm talking about Jerry. This is not me. I'm talking about, you asked me what my perception of where he's coming from is. His perception is that I got you locked in for 3 years. You ain't going nowhere unless I say so. And that makes, obviously, a lot of people uncomfortable when you're listening to Jerry Jones. I love the fact that we played that sound. And by the way, it'll be posted on my show, the Stephen A. Smith Show on YouTube, starting at 12 noon, the minute that First Take is over. That's when it'll be up on YouTube in its entirety. It's over an hour long. And I think the thing that resonated with me is that he said, I didn't call him, he called me. He wanted to start this negotiation. We had a negotiation. We agreed. And then the next thing you know, he calls on the phone and says, don't call me anymore. I didn't hear that before. I don't know if that was the truth with Micah. I offered Micah to come on the show. Micah, he declined. He did not come on the show. I offered his agent, David Mulugeta, to come on the show. He hasn't come on the show. I'm not saying there's no negative or positive to it. I'm just letting you know. I offered all of them to come on the show. Jerry Jones didn't hesitate, and that's his position. And so, for me, it's at a standstill right now. I ultimately believe they will reach an accord because I think that Micah, I think he's going to get his money. I think that Jerry is being as stubborn as he always has been, as counterproductive as he always has been when it comes to signing contracts a little bit later than they should have been signed because you're compromising your cap. But the biggest reason I feel that way is because he is stubborn. He is unapologetic about it. He swears he's changed and modified himself to some degree. I don't believe that. I told him, I haven't seen any evidence of that, Jerry. Okay? But that's where he's coming from, and that's what it is.
Well, Stephen A., this is why typically general managers and agents negotiate these contracts and not owners and players, because the owner and the player both have a vested interest. And when it comes to the business of football, they're too close to it. So having a third party that is somewhat removed from it in terms of what it means matters when it comes to getting these deals across the goal line. Now, as far as why Jerry is taking this tack with Micah, I think a part of it is the showmanship. A part of it is the soap opera and being able to maintain the business model of the Dallas Cowboys being the story in the NFL 365. Jerry Jones likened it to playing on Broadway, being a part of the Dallas Cowboys. But I do think there is an agenda that Jerry has, and it has nothing to do with football. It has everything to do with pushing back against the resurgence of player empowerment and how NFL players have tried to push the envelope to get closer in partnership with owners, comparable to what we've seen from NBA players and in that league. And Jerry Jones, God bless him for doing all of these interviews, the one great thing that happens when you talk a lot is eventually you're going to tell on yourself. And in his interview that he did with Michael Irvin on the podcast yesterday, Jerry said something that was very telling about how he views the situation, not only with Micah, but with David Mulugeta and with the NFL business model as a whole. And he said, and I quote, "At some point, someone has to have say over the other," end quote. This is about Jerry Jones asserting his position as the owner and as the tone setter for the National Football League. And it's not only with Micah Parsons in this negotiation for his football team, but it's also with David Mulugheta, his agent, who just so happens to be the man that negotiated the Deshaun Watson contract that every owner in the NFL ridiculed Jimmy Haslam for doling out. They do not want this to be what the NBA has turned into. They want to maintain this power imbalance that they have with the NFL players currently.
Well, can I just say, every owner wants to establish, or a GM wants to establish its team first, right? So what did you think about Jerry's stance and what CC and Steven said?
I have to start with this. Move over Frost Nixon, because I'd like an hour-long, 2-hour-long movie on that interview. I thought that was fantastic. I need more. I need more, and at 12 noon, I'll get to that.
Now, more coming.
That aside, I think you make an excellent point, because the way he does business, it's not a surprise that there is a run of championships and then a stoppage of championships, and right in that spot is where the salary cap and the collective bargaining agreement and everything changed. Back in the day, the power dynamic, owner over player, forceful, that worked a little bit more. But that dynamic has shifted. Players have gotten smarter. The salary cap, agents, everything that has taken place has shifted that dynamic. Players realize they are a business, they are a brand. They hire a team around them to handle things that they are not fully versed on because they're playing football or they're playing basketball. I'll give Jerry a little bit of credit here because it is crafty. I mean, this is a negotiation. You're trying to separate the player from his agent. If you get the agent out of the equation, you might be able to swing the balance of power in your favor. You might be able to save a little bit of money. The problem with that move is once you get outed like he has been now you have to figure out what the next step is because you've escalated in the conflict. And if the other side doesn't take that kindly, which they're not, now we start to get to a point where, not exactly Cuban Missile Crisis, but...
Nobody's wrong here, but the power dynamic element that you brought up needs to be addressed with the seriousness that it deserves. Because on one hand, particularly in this day and age, it would offend most people. In the case of Jerry Jones, understand it's a little twist that he threw into the mix. And I don't know if this is true or not because, again, I haven't spoken to Micah Parsons about it. But Jerry Jones said, A, he called me. B, he wanted to negotiate on his own behalf. And then when we did it, he called me back and said, don't call me no more. And when he said it, if you were sitting in front of him like I was, it was this body language that said, who the hell does he think he's dealing with? Do you not know who the hell I am? I'm Jerry Jones. That's entirely different than Dak. That's entirely different than the CeeDee Lamb. That's entirely different than Ezekiel Elliott or Zach Martin or others from, in terms of the contract negotiations. It's personal to some degree, whether he's willing to admit it or not, because of what he has articulated in terms of how the contract negotiations transpire. Because naturally, you know me, I was like, come on, Jerry. You know what I'm saying? And they cut it off or whatever, but you'll see it on my show. But I'm like, come on, Jerry. The brother, 25 years old. He's a puppy, and this is not to disrespect or act like Micah Parsons is not smart and brilliant and all that. But he's 25. He's a 25-year-old football player. Your organization is worth $12.8 billion. You are worth over $16 billion. You've been negotiating a decade plus before this kid was born. What are you talking about? Why? That man called me and then told me don't call him. After we did all of this. Now I got a problem with that. That's how he was coming at it. And that's why I think this particular negotiation is different than the others. Because he's saying his behavior is different than what the others were. You'll hear him bring up Dak Prescott and the difference between Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons as it pertains to how these negotiations have transpired. And again, whether you agree or disagree, he's on the record. And I tell people this all the time. If I'm interviewing you on First Take, that's different. Make your answers quick. We got about 8 minutes. I got you for more than an hour. Man, you talk away.
Talk all you want.
So I want to hear what you got to say. I want every syllable. I want it all. Go ahead, because I want to hear so there's no stone left unturned. You're going to give a complete answer. And that's what he gave.
What do you guys think about what Steven's saying? As far as one of the words Steven mentioned earlier is Jerry is resolute. So at this point, do you see these two sides coming together? Like, do you think Micah should step on the football field week one without an extension?
Hell no. Why should Micah incur any more risk? The only leverage that a player has is withholding services. And if Jerry won't give Micah what he's looking for, if he won't talk to David Mulugheta and structure the contract in a way that the player is comfortable with, then the player doesn't need to absorb any more risk. And we've seen this in the past in terms of players being able to execute this game plan. Think back to what Jalen Ramsey did when he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He said, my back hurts. And he didn't step foot on the field again until he played for the LA Rams. He demanded a trade, got traded, and got his bag, happened to win a Super Bowl ring. That's what this thing is setting up for. Also, by the way, Jalen Ramsey, represented by David Mulligala. So when it comes to Jerry Jones saying that he has Micah Parsons' rights for the next 3 years, technically he's right. But if we're being pragmatic about this, that's not how this is going to play out. So if you're Micah Parsons, if you're in his camp, the only thing that you can continue to do is be resolute in your position and withhold your services and see how this plays out in hopes that Jerry eventually caves like he did in '93 with Emmitt Smith.
The other thing you got to mention, I feel obligated to mention this year, he did bring up Dak Prescott. He said, we didn't agree with Dak Prescott the first go-round. He went out on the field and played. We didn't agree with him the second go-round. He went out on the field and played. So he's making a point that there has been precedent with the modern-day players, particularly those who played for the Cowboys, where there's been a deviation from what Micah is doing compared to what they were doing. Again, that don't make it right, but that's how he's looking at it.
There's
Can
a
I
way
ask, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Dak Prescott did go out and play. Do you remember what happened to Dak Prescott?
That's right, he got hurt.
Exactly. His ankle and his kneecap were facing different directions.
That's right.
So he plays quarterback,
Right.
a very different position than edge pass rusher. You kind of need your knees and ankles to be good at that. So an injury would affect Micah in his career trajectory in a much different way.
We all agree with you on that one. But
Yeah.
what he's saying, but see, that's how you're looking at it.
Yes.
That's how I'm looking at
Yeah.
it. Let me tell you how Jerry's looking at it.
Yeah.
Didn't Dak get paid? Because Dak Prescott was still made the highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
That's fair. That's fair.
what he's looking at it from. So in other words, he's saying, I take care of peeps. How dare you come at me like this?
As long
That's how
as
he
you
is.
do it my way.
That's right.
The smartest move for
Like
Micah
most billionaires.
is to play. The smartest move for Mike is to play, and it's
Whoa,
not
okay.
it hurts the ego. But the thing is, this standoff needs someone to take a step forward in order for it to be resolved, and it's not going to be Jerry. He's made it very clear. And on top of that, precedent is the word Stephen A. just used. That's going to be important here because there's two angles that keep getting brought up. Well, you could trade Micah Parsons. That precedent is an awful one to set. Anytime a player gets upset, you trade him. What happens the next time someone's upset in Dallas? They're going to want to trade. It's going to create a new problem. Can't set that precedent. Number two, you find yourself in a situation where, exactly to your point, step foot on the field and play. You're incurring risk, and you're absolutely right. But at that point, this man doesn't want any more of this embarrassment. They don't want this. They've got Philadelphia in a little over a week. All right, they don't want to go out there and continue. The marketing angle and the genius of always being the top story is great right up until the season starts, and then you start getting your ass kicked on a regular basis.
Mulligala and them want everybody to know. You know, I haven't spoken to them directly, but I've spoken to enough sources close to the situation. They want everybody to know when they talked about Jerry, it was like, don't bring it here. In other words, don't bring a final take it or leave it offer.
Right.
If you want to tell us what's on the table and you're open to negotiation, we're all ears. Just don't come to us with a take it or leave it proposition. That's their position. That's what they want to make sure the world knows. To answer you, in terms of Micah stepping out on the field, I got to side with CC about this, and I told Jerry that because in the end, here's the bottom line. If you're Micah Parsons, you can't afford to have a devastating injury before you have your new contract. You can't afford to take that risk. As a quarterback, again, you need your arm. You need everything, but you need your arm more than you need anything else.
No doubt.
You know, in Micah Parsons' case, it's a little bit different. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, and then you look at the fact that the Myles Garretts, the Max Crosbys of the world, you got guys that got TJ Watt and others, you got cats that got taken care of. And Micah's mentality is, I wanted to negotiate early. I was willing to take less. I did all of this, but that was something that you weren't willing to engage in at the time. Whereas Jerry's position is, we did engage early. We engaged months ago, and we had a deal, and it was something you instigated. Jerry's big thing is, I ain't instigate this. He instigated this, and they're going to turn around and tell me, don't call him anymore. So it is a bit personal, and this does feel a lot different than other negotiations.
But does that give you the
with the
sense
Cowboys.
that he would be willing to relent before Micah? If Micah's holding out,
No, I'm saying he's not willing to relent. He's not willing to relent, but remember Emmitt Smith in 1993.
No doubt.
Remember
Talk
what
about
happened? You led the league in rushing with over 1,700 yards. You led the league in rushing with 18 touchdowns. What happened? Jerry Jones still held out and didn't want to pay him, right? And ultimately you go 0-2, and Jimmy Johnson is speechless and frustrated. And then he signed Emmitt. And what did they do? They go on to win the Super Bowl. I said, Jerry, how does that have anything to do with this conversation? He said, we went on to win the Super Bowl. Even after he held out, even after he missed 2 games, we still won. So that's his mentality. It's going to see who bends first.
Well, watching the Cowboys documentary on Netflix, it's clear that